right, the Denny's plan. Here we
Yeah.
have another chain restaurant. Denny's Outback. What is this about?
Clearly, Steve was hungry while he was writing this script. He had that in mind. And next time I go to Denny's, I'll just, see how people are maneuvering, what kind of conversations are going on, because you never know what people are there for, besides the pancakes.
Apparently, there's some eavesdropping that can happen at a Denny's when you're waiting for your Grand Slam. Well, welcome everybody to DTF St. Louis, the unofficial after show. We have reached our penultimate episode, second to last here. It's kind of hard to believe, really, but we are wrapping up towards the end.
We are. Things are shaping up. Floyd hasn't gotten any happier. We'll talk about in this episode. He's very in a very dark spot, and Clark's trying to uplift his friend, but in doing so, he might have been the nail in the coffin for him. So
so much to talk about in this episode. I think we're going to get to every little aspect that we can.
Yeah.
And we have some really great guests on this show too. So stay with us through this entire show. But this episode opens in the skate park again, which is kind of funny to me because no one actually skates in this skate park. We get a little bit of gymnastics or pommel horse sometimes. But again, this really interesting conversation with Floyd and Richard that I was wondering what you thought, because to me it really establishes that Richard knows about this friendship and just how special it is.
It's, again, this show has been really hitting the nail on the head in regards to people are yearning for connection, regardless of their age, regardless of their status. And Richard and Floyd, I mean, they have that in, similarity to them. They're two lost, I don't say lost souls, but two people that are just looking for some type of friendship, whether it's their age group, same sex, whatever the case may be. And it almost makes me feel like I wish they would have they had each other the whole time. But no, I've always loved these conversations that we've gotten so far between these two, because they've been just so earnest and been so just like uplifting to one another. But again, there's something about this episode in particular, little hints of with Richard being brought up in this episode, him mentioning the bike a couple times, and him acknowledging how he wants his friendship very similar to his stepdad. So there's a lot that I liked from this first scene here. Yeah,
and he says, Clark's on billboards, and Floyd says, well, that's not why we're best friends necessarily, but he's a cool dude, and it's kind of establishing again that Richard knows all of that.
Yep.
And then we shift, of course, into this new dynamic at the hotel between Clark, Floyd, and Carol.
Yeah.
And it did not go according to, I guess, maybe anyone's plans.
Yeah.
Kind of an awkward, very cringy, awful scene.
If you're Floyd in that position, you've been watching these interactions between your wife and your best friend, how it's very organic, it's very kind of natural to them, but then to have you now be in the situation that you should be in with your significant other and it be so disjointed, so uncomforting, just there's no syncing of the two. That was very hard to watch for not only everyone in the room, but also us as the audience, because you're wanting them to have that connection. Again, you want Floyd to have a moment of peace or to celebrate something, and especially the intimacy with his wife, but it just can't happen. And Clark's just sitting there watching, and you can feel you're in him. You feel like you're in him in that closet, because you're like, oh man, this is my friend. I want things to work out, but it was hard to watch.
Yeah, and what do you think is going through Carol's mind? Because I think we sort of felt like she maybe genuinely wanted to reconcile and wanted things to heal, and then it doesn't go that way at all. So was she genuine, or did she try? Did she give it her all, I guess?
It didn't seem that way to me, because she was very turned off very quickly of just the different position they were in. So I think initially the idea sounded good, but the moment it didn't sync up for her. So, I feel so bad for Floyd once again, and this show has really done a good job of making us get on his side and really sympathizing with him in his position. But, I feel like Carol just didn't give it much of an effort, or as much effort as Floyd did in that moment.
It makes me think back to the last episode where, she kind of seems like she is wanting to reconcile, but then he brings up, well, can Clark be there as well? And I sort of watched her face fall, and I kind of just wondered, like, what if they had just tried, just the two of them? What if they had tried some therapy? What if they had tried some other communication besides this sort of, situation where they've all found themselves in? I don't know if that was part of the reason she was just like, I can't do this.
It could be. It's such a weird dynamic just in general, but I mean, you're totally right. It could be the case that maybe she did want just them two to be involved, but now Clark's tagging along, and it's not. And knowing too that Carol has been doing this whole self-help tape, and she's trying to control situations, so it was kind of a variable that she didn't have any control over. So maybe she was a little bit upset with that too, because she didn't really have a say if Clark was going to be involved. She, of course, just kind of played along because she's trying to make things work. But yeah, I think you're totally right. I think she was kind of maybe uncomfortable with the idea of the person that she maybe wants to be intimate with not being involved.
But then she gets up, she kind of adjusts her makeup, walks out, kind of feels sort of callous. So a part of me was also wondering, okay, so she's still back in on it. Was this a part of the plan all along for her to string somebody along, Clark or Floyd, not George?
I think you're totally right on that.
Yeah. So this is beginning to me of a real shift in Floyd.
Yeah.
Where, he's been this sort of upbeat person, trying to be his authentic self, whether it's through dancing or ASL. Something shifts. And I do want to play real quickly a bit of his dialogue that I think really sums that up.
Yep.
It's gone.
Gone how?
Like from sex. I'm like at an age where I'm just kind of invisible. Like in line or in a restaurant, it's like people don't even realize that I'm there. Used to be that people would be like, hey, look at that guy, he's cute, but now it's not anymore. Ever.
So again, I think that kind of sums up. I mean, this is the first time we've heard him just sort of be like so despondent. Like I can't. Yeah. He said, I know I'm gone from Carol.
Yeah.
And for him to sort of give up on that too, because he had also said, I want to reconcile with her. But he's just sort of like, I don't know where else to go. I'm done. And I do wonder in that soundbite there, what he said, the piece of dialogue, I think people can kind of relate to that.
100%. Yeah. I mean, so we've known now for, I think he said over about 10 months now, him and Carol haven't been intimate with each other. So I think he's always known this, but then to have it kind of be seen for someone else like Clark to be in that position and kind of see it from an outside perspective, I think it kind of hit home because we know how much Clark means to him. So yeah, that was really, really a moment because we met Floyd in kind of a weird spot in his life anyway, but this is probably the lowest we've seen him, at least in the context of the show. And I feel so bad for the character, but also you can see the wheels running or turning in Clark's head because that was the moment Tiger came into play and he wanted to be there for his friend. And we're really understanding that Clark, regardless of what the final outcome may be, I think he genuinely does love Floyd and wants Floyd to succeed and wants him to thrive. But yeah, in that moment of him saying he's gone, you kind of feel that for him and you can see it literally. He's like, the personality, the mannerisms, his energy is just completely taken out of him because I think he was led to believe that this is a new chapter in his life. He can now maybe get back to a happy spot, get back to a good spot in his relationship, and it's just not there.
And I think we can see it too, of course, in his signing. He's doing the weather report at one point, standing next to Clark, and his heart is just not in it. And then Clark is asking him, "Are you okay?" He's kind of brushing it off a little bit, but I really, again, really appreciate the way they weave in ASL dialogue for us as the viewer. And we have some guests coming up from the deaf community and an ASL interpreter that I think will give some really good insight to this. But, he's kind of showing that his passion that he loves. Then they go to the St. Louis School for the Deaf with kids. You'd think this would be Floyd's
moment.
Yes, his moment.
Yeah.
And he just can't. He can't bring himself to enjoy
one of those, and you just mentioned it. We've all probably experienced this some point in our life where career's going well, but personal life's not going well, and vice versa. And it's just like you're looking for that moment where things are just clicking on all cylinders. But when something so pivotal, that your wife, your relationship, your family's not where it's at, it's like a domino effect. And we see that with Floyd.
Although I still sort of wonder if a part of it is just these external validation factors that he's needing.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's not so much even worried about his marriage with Carol.
Right.
But about, I used to look a certain type of way. I don't look that way anymore. I need to get back to the person I was. I need to, he has a phrase about, when he's ready to be intimate that he keeps using. And that's why he does the emphyseme and stuff like that. It's almost like, do you think he's looking for this external validation and that's becoming more important than anything else?
We've seen throughout this season him and Clark doing their workouts routine, and Clark is, a smaller guy physically, but also just like his body type seems to be like, oh, is that what my wife likes? Does she want me to? And of course we know that him from the Indiana Jones stuff, he was in pretty good shape at one point in time. So it's almost like that you're chasing your past and it's preventing you from moving forward with what's going on in your life now and, of course, your future. So I think there is a lot to say about, again, knowing that a lot of this show is touching on like a existential crisis, and it's just like everything's just not, you're my physical, my mental, all of it's just kind of coming to a point where Floyd's just like doesn't have a handle on it.
Even though he's got a great friendship, and things are going well with his stepson, so it's it's like this one thing is really just eating him up inside. I really appreciated the scene back at the Jamba Juice. Next time we go to the Jamba Juice, and Floyd is there suddenly for all of a sudden
peanut butter.
He gets
something
PB
drink?
chocolate love, which I think. Oops, I'm sorry to hit the microphone, but I looked it up. It's got like 640 calories in it, so it's meant to be the the sweet treat, not the healthy treat.
Yeah.
And he immediately throws it away. But then digs it out of the trash and puts it in the recycling. It's just stuff like that where you still you root for him.
Yeah.
But now we're really seeing him fall apart. I kept wondering, does he need Empazine or does he need an antidepressant?
Yeah, probably that. And you hit on it earlier. He needs a therapist. He needs someone to talk to kind of work out these demons instead of for allowing it to kind of spread across his life and affecting him in such a major way.
So let's turn to Clark for a second. First of all, there was kind of a jaw-dropper scene for me because we've seen this opening credits, I don't know, what would you call it? It's not a montage, obviously, but it's sort of like this, pixelated view of him that I always assumed was his warm
hyping up. Trying to get in the mindset of being the weatherman, the great, famous weatherman.
Right.
So
and then we learn it's subverted. It's not that. Something else happened.
Yeah. It's called a panic attack.
Or
he just kind of, I don't know, he just hit. He's doing his regular thing that he's normally doing. I think he's thinking of Floyd and kind of having a moment as well. And it was kind of funny because we've seen this show has done these moments where it's just like these moments of like, what's going on here? What did I just witness? And that was a perfect example of that. He's doing karate and says beware out of nowhere. And it just kind of, hit him at a certain point. And we see him talking to his daughter. He's not present. So we see how much Floyd being in the funk affected him. And he's trying to figure out a way to kind of get his friend back on the right path. But yeah, it was a very funny moment, but also it goes back to the opening credits. So we now have context to that scene. So it was really, really interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting for me because I've obviously been an on-air TV person for a long time. I work with all of my colleagues, and there's been moments we've seen around the country where people have had real medical issues live on the air.
Passed out or
or a stroke, and you suddenly can't find your words or you get very confused. And so that's sort of what I assumed was happening right there was he was having some kind of real medical issue. And a panic attack, of course, is one. Yeah. But it was just this so uncomfortable. I kept waiting for the producer or the director to cut away from him because he's just, and then he goes back to doing it. But instead of going to see a doctor again, he's just braiding his daughter's hair. That scene was interesting to me because, again, there's these moments where it's like, can they shift back to thinking about other people or other things rather than their own desires? He was like, you'd think the revelation would have been, maybe I should be focusing on my kids or my family. But instead he's like, no, I've decided I'm going to cheat on my wife. Right then and there.
Yeah. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but he wanted to, it was in that moment he realized, I want to experience danger. I think he was talking about experiencing an intimate moment underwater and how uncomfortable that is, but yet he wants to experience that because he wants to shake up his life. And he does that in a very dangerous way, involving himself in this relationship where someone unfortunately ends up dead. So, it's a very, the pivotal moments to where these characters find themselves into how they found this relationship or found this this romantic situation is very interesting. How Floyd kind of came from it from a perspective of trying to have his wife to be happy. Carol's just kind of trying to find her own voice. And then we have Clark, again, trying to shake up his life. So it all stems from some people are doing it for, in their way, good intentions, and other people are affecting others.
Yeah, and I still kind of wonder if sometimes it's a little selfish,
Yeah,
if it's not even though I think they all try to think about each other in various ways.
In their ways,
But like many of us, motivated by their own intentions.
Yeah.
Why does Clark start talking again all of a sudden? He's like, I'm not going to talk anymore, and then suddenly he's an open book again.
I think it just boils down to he realizes that this is a serious situation. As we know, he's on trial for, he's going to be potentially going to death row. So, he's at a position now where I think he started to realize the clock is running out. He has this burden on his shoulders that he needs to get off of his chest. And I think as we find out in this episode, he kind of lets it all out where things kind of led and how essentially once we find out what killed Floyd, it all kind of stemmed from his thinking he was doing the right thing, but then he ended up pushing his friend further off the edge or pushing him down the cliff, and per se, with him now getting this plan in place.
Also, why is he never in a jumpsuit? Why is he never in like prison or jail garb?
Yeah,
he's always in his like suit, and I'm like, hasn't he been there for days?
I guess it's maybe it's just laundry day at the prison or at the police facility, and they just don't have any extra clothes from nowhere right now.
Yeah. Well, and of course, Clark being a TV weatherman, we did have to interview our TV weatherman, Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton, who I can guarantee would never find himself in any of these situations. However, he is going to be kind of breaking down what's sort of real about some of the way that TV weather folks are portrayed and what's not, and some of his interesting points about this show. So we have that coming up a little bit later in the show also. But we do have to get into this plan now.
Yes.
The Denny's plan, Clark's plan. First of all, we've known for a long time that he created Tiger.
Correct. Yeah.
And I wrote down the profile that he made. Did you screenshot it?
Yeah, it was very much in line with what Floyd was looking for. More about friendship and connection and stuff like that.
Yeah, we can't help but be influenced by those in our orbit. So I want to spend my life surrounded by people worth emulating, people who flow with love and care, who are thoughtful, brave, and earnest, people who keep the big things big and the little things little, people who go the extra mile for their friends. I mean, could that have been crafted any more for Floyd?
Yeah, it's like his tattoo that he's been wearing on his head for this whole season. So that definitely would speak to him.
But what's going through Clark's mind that he's like, this is what I need to do. This is the only way that I can cheer him up, as opposed to being like, hey, man, we're going to get through this.
Yeah.
Why don't you try again with Carol? Why don't, we end whatever we've had going on? Like, why this concocted plan? That
is a very interesting question because, you would think a more subtle plan, a more kind of less putting yourself out there and getting other people involved would be probably not the best thing to do. But again, as we've kind of alluded to, these characters have made decisions that I think come from a good place. I think at the end of the day, he's trying to help his friend out, but it's the ways he's going about it that is very toxic and very not the right way to go about things. So again, I do think it comes from a good spot. It's just, unfortunately, the execution it just made things worse.
Yeah, and of course he thinks that Floyd is not going to actually try and meet up with Tiger. And he's wrong. Yeah, he's wrong about that because Floyd is just seeking that connection so desperately. And this whole plan. So then is Clark just in it, and he's like, well, now I have to go this step further to go to the Denny's in Chicago.
Yeah. It was at the boys' Denny's.
And
I don't know how he found it out, but he goes to Chicago and comes across the waiter. And Jason, this is why you cast Jason Bateman, because he knows how to play that fine line of being serious yet being very cringy, but yet being very sincere and has a little bit of charm. But it was a perfect scene to kind of show someone trying to say what they're trying to essentially pay for prostitution without physically, without saying it out loud. And the maneuvering around that was just hilarious to me. And the waiter, poor waiter's just like trying to be as polite and professional as possible. He's like, do
you want coffee or not? I don't know.
Come check me. All the little innuendos were just hilarious to me. Yeah.
And you keep thinking maybe this is going to be the guy that takes the bait, and so you're like, okay, kind of waiting. And then he says, no, I'm not comfortable with that. Like, what you're asking me is really weird, and I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Then we have the perfect eavesdropper.
Mystery guy.
Yes, who's just like, I'll do it.
I'll do it.
I'll do it.
Makes you wonder if he was there, he says he's been telling him. I wonder if he was there the whole time in regards to maybe from a certain perspective. But, that the eavesdropper, and then to that's when Floyd should have just, or Clark should have just abort mission. Now I don't know who you are. I have no control over the situation. Bringing a stranger to the situation is just a horrible idea. Talk about beware and danger. He really leaned it to that, and it was just from there on. It's just so bad for what he did.
Yeah, and Chris Perfetti, am I saying that right?
The actors.
Yes.
Yeah.
So people online had noticed he was in the credits.
Yeah.
He was at the opening, the premiere. And so, what do you know about this actor? Because I don't know much about him. I thought I saw Abbott Elementary is where a lot of people would know him from.
I have. It is on my watch list. I've seen clips. He's, from what I've seen, very great comedic time, and as we kind of saw in this moment. He's a really good character actor. He picks characters that he's almost a chameleon in a sense, where he can just pop in and out of a show and stand out, as we see in this episode here. So he's a really talented actor, and it was whenever you have a mystery show and you have like a Hail Mary fourth quarter mystery player, now you're like drawn towards them, like, oh, well, now this throws a whole new wrench to the equation. But the whole process of him being involved and then him coming a day early, it just seems very almost set in motion from himself from I don't know how long, but yeah, he's definitely a new player on the board.
Mm-hmm. And he's riding around in an electric scooter, which again, just kind of funny, and shows up in weird places. I liked this park scene that was going on because it reminded me of Forest Park, which is our majorly huge park in St. Louis. And they even say like the St. Louis Science Center. There's a couple little like St. Louis hints that get thrown in there this time, and I appreciated that. But why would Clark go talk to him when Floyd can clearly see? I just thought that was just such a misstep on Clark's part.
Definitely a huge mistake, fumble at that moment. I think he was just trying to, again, when you're scrambling to try to figure things out, you find yourself just making the worst decisions in these type of situations. And yeah, you're totally right. You should have maybe pulled him further away from the side or, did something other than what he decided to do. And unfortunately, Floyd sees the conversation. He puts, and he explains the whole situation.
It got nixed.
The Knicks, And he mentioned, I know we talked about this off camera, that he's going to now go to a place that we've been, which is Martin Love's skating rink. So now you're starting to see the pieces kind of come together. They mentioned the earlier scene in the episode with Carol and Floyd. He calls her Carol Love. They're putting emphasis now to keep saying love, love, love. So now we're like, oh, well, is Modern Love somehow warped into this situation? So this scene seems to be very pivotal for how things might wrap up in our finale.
It would be very coincidental if Tiger's just having a vu, as he calls it, a rendezvous with Modern Love. Yeah. And like, are they the only two? How many people are on this app?
This is a brand new app. Yeah, it must be on the beta stage, and very few people are using it.
Because there's probably still people that would swipe right on David Harbour. That's what I was kind of funny too. That I was going to mention to you is like David Harbour has this following of being such an attractive person. There's so many people that completely stand him. Mm-hmm. Stephen Conrad called him like a sexier Gene Wilder. So for him to not feel, like he is that person is kind of hilarious because he's just having this moment where he's certainly that way to a lot of fans.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought that was so crazy and I want to touch on one other thing too. So they're far apart in the park using ASL to communicate.
Yeah.
I feel like the show has woven music in so wonderfully. Most of the music has like weather theme or sunshine theme to it and just some really great songs for the moment.
Yeah.
That scene, no audio at all.
Right.
There's not even, I can't even hear like a bird chirp or anything. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was potentially to give us the perspective of a deaf person.
Right.
I thought that was just like, to watch dialogue like that. Mm-hmm. Do you ever watch shows on closed caption?
All the time. I literally, if I don't even know what they're saying.
Yeah.
It could be all the way up on the volume and be like, I can't hear a thing.
I'm the same way. I almost have to have the closed caption now to enhance my experience so that I know I'm fully engaging in all the dialogue and everything.
Yeah.
So I just really have appreciated seeing sign language this way.
Yeah.
And it being such a big part of the dialogue itself.
100%. The only show I can think of in recent memory, completely different show, but Marvel had a show on Disney Plus called Echo, and the main character, same thing. They couldn't speak, so most of the show was in a similar vein, and they handled it pretty well. So it is only one of this show and the show I just mentioned, Echo, are one of the only two bigger shows I've seen that used it a lot, predominantly, in having that representation in their show, which is really awesome to see.
Well, that would be a great segue to our next guests with Def Inc. here in St. Louis. So we will be right back with them right after this break. Welcome back, everybody. Well, of course, we've been talking a lot about how ASL is a big part of this show. And so we are very excited to be joined by a very special guest today. Delinda Bright is the Director of Community Programs for Def Inc., and she is deaf, and she uses an interpreter to communicate. So voicing for Delinda will be an interpreter who is sitting next to me. Delinda, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here at the show.
We were talking a little bit before about how you had to binge this show to catch up. What do you think overall? What do you make of it?
It's odd. It's a little, just not very much used to that kind of show, as well as like the interpreting is a little okay.
We definitely want to get your opinion about that because I know a lot of St. Louisans are a little bit frustrated about the portrayal of St. Louis. I was sort of hoping they would get at least the signing right. If they didn't get all of St. Louis right, did they get the signing right? So what are you noticing about that aspect of it?
The interpreter within the show, I'm just going to say the signing is about 50% accurate. The rest is not. It's not even close. It's more just gesturing and hand movements. There's no actual interpreting going on.
Interesting. Do you hope that if they're going to do a show like that they're going to do their homework first?
Yes. As well as hiring the right person to do the job as well. We within the deaf community fully understand that Hollywood really prefers using the A-list, the B-list, or even the C-list actors for the name, the glamour of the name. But at the same time, you can use other people that already have that skill set to be able to do it correctly. There are a few actors within Hollywood that already are interpreters, like previously. Why not use them? Instead of a person who is just kind of creating their own signs.
It takes a long time to learn and to learn it correctly.
Oh, yes, yes. Research shows that it takes about 7 years to learn in depth American Sign Language. People often think that American Sign Language is very much like English. It's like, oh, just written English. It is not. It is a completely different language. We have different rules. We have different syntax. We have different grammar, everything. Everything that is included, the grammatical structure, it is not the same as English at all. So there is a lot more to that as well as interpreting, well, signing, not interpreting. There's facial expressions, there's role shifting and body movement. Whenever you're hearing, you rely on the tone of voice. So you can identify, oh, that person is angry, or that person is excited, or happy, or oh, they're sick of it. You're able to identify it easily with the tone of voice. With deaf people, we very much need facial expressions and your body language to be able to identify, oh, what is that person's tone with what they're saying. So it takes a lot of work, especially for a hearing person who wants to become an interpreter. They're not used to that whenever they were growing up. Those like facial expressions, you have to really study it and practice it and learn how to do them correctly, like with your eyebrows and your your mouth morphemes. I mean, just one like little movement of your mouth can completely change the meaning of the word, or if you do it a different way, it again completely changes the meaning of the message. So it's a very unique and complex language.
Is it fixed at this point, or is it evolving still?
Oh, it is constantly evolving, constantly evolving. I'll give you an example. This sign right here with your two fists next to your mouth and your ear would be this old sign for telephone, because whenever you would like crank it and you would talk, you would have the thing to your ear and the thing to your mouth. That is what deaf people would sign for telephone. And then it changed to phone like this with the Y hand shape, because you would hold your phone up against your face. And then it's changed again to holding it like this in this bent C hand shape, because you have your cell phone. So it's changed over the years. Other changes would be the sign for computer. This used to be the sign because you'd have those huge discs that went in circles. Now we use this sign, and then again it changed, and now we have this sign, which is the sign for laptop, and we use that for computer. Or iPad, that's another sign that we'll use. So yes, sign language is constantly changing over time. Some of it is fixed, some of it doesn't change, but a lot of it does constantly evolve.
You mentioned facial expressions and sort of the additional things beyond the signs. This character seems to take some pride in being especially enthusiastic. Do you find that that is an important aspect, or are they not getting it quite right?
The character did use some facial expressions and that were correct, but other times they completely were the wrong facial expressions to include with the sign that they were using. Again, the person is not, obviously not done enough research for this to fully understand what kind of facial expressions need to be used for the message. For example, when a deaf person asks a question, the eyebrows go up. So it's like asking, like, how are you, like, down, like, up or down, depending on the person. It's like, but you can also just sign, like, old and have your eyebrows down, and that is how you say, how old are you? Or just like, what's up? And you have your eyebrows up. How you doing? Eyebrows up. Doing good. Okay, great. We catch on to those little movements, and we're able to identify what the person is saying clearly. Whenever I mentioned about a hearing interpreter needing to study and do a lot of research and do all these different things to become an interpreter, we also have deaf interpreters as well. They're called Certified Deaf Interpreters, or CDIs, and we have deaf interpreters who are already involved and already knew, they grew up with the language. They have those facial expressions down packed, but now they have to learn and how to become an interpreter and learn how to work with a hearing team so that they can feed and work with each other, which is, again, just another learning curve.
The show also has a small moment with a deaf-blind person. Is that a whole other dynamic as well, and a completely different set of skills and a separate language?
Yes, and a little no. Yes, their lives are completely different than a person who is only deaf. Some deaf-blind individuals use sign language. Some deaf and blind individuals do not. When a deaf-blind individual uses sign language, we use something called tactile sign or protactile sign. If the person that is deaf-blind is fully blind, then you'll use the protactile, which is like you have their hands within your hand, in the interpreter's hands or the person who's signing's hands, so that the deaf-blind can feel the movements of what you're signing. If a deaf-blind person has some vision, they could just have to look just like up close to the interpreter, just have to be closer to the signing, or just be able to like have their hand on the signer's wrist so that they can follow the movements and follow where the hands are going. Here in St. Louis, we have a very, very large group of deaf-blind individuals here in the state of Missouri specifically, and mostly them in St. Louis. And about half of them are oral, and they do not use sign at all.
Do you have a question, Elliot?
We were talking briefly off camera about you being a fan of movies and shows. I'm just curious, is there a movie or a show that you felt had a great representation within the deaf community that you thought did a really good job in that?
The first, I think the absolute best movie was Coda.
Best picture, yeah.
It was the most authentic representation of the deaf community. Coda, it was released several years ago now, and it won many, many, many awards. I mean, more than I could possibly count. Yeah. There were just so many.
Deservedly so, no.
If you watch Coda, you're able to recognize the characters, their facial expressions. They move their face a lot. And that is normal. It's not exaggerated for the show. It's completely normal. That is how we sign and how we communicate. Another one that I think is one of the best great representations was, what was it called? I forgot the name. It was a deaf woman who was an amputee.
Oh, we were talking Echo on Disney Plus.
Yes,
yeah.
Echo. Mm-hmm. That is another one that I was very, very impressed with. Mm-hmm. He's a completely deaf individual who is just an actor, and highly praised for her roles that she's involved in. And it's really cool that they use the interpreters. And able to have the interpreter in the glasses screen. I just thought, it's like, where is that? I want that for myself. That's so cool. There's several others that are good representations, but kind of wish that there was more. Yeah. But Coda, I think, is just the absolute best, the top.
When it comes to this show, then, do you think even just having representation of ASL at all is helpful to bring awareness, or can it do more harm than good?
It is nice that the writers included interpreters in the series. That is nice. But out of the many, many, many different characters and their backgrounds and their work, you could have chosen an ASL interpreter. Like, where did that come from? Like that. So it is nice that they decided to choose the ASL interpreter as the profession. But I do think it's a pretty bad representation, unfortunately. I just wish that they used a deaf interpreter, maybe. Or used an interpreter that was already involved within Hollywood. I'm afraid of how popular this show is spreading the wrong message to viewers. Things like, oh, sign language interpreters are so cool because they see another person signing, like, oh, that means that they're interpreter. No. Just because they signed does not mean they're an interpreter. To work within the state of Missouri, you have to be licensed and certified to work. So it's not just anyone can become an interpreter.
Another thing that's come up is that we don't always have interpreters at a TV station. Sometimes there's been elements maybe of a government press conference or something like that. Do you know why not? Why aren't, for people who don't understand, why aren't closed captions enough?
That is a great question. I'm so happy you asked me that. I remember explaining that ASL is not the same as English, if you remember me explaining that at the beginning. It is not the same grammar structure. So with American Sign Language, it's a lot of deaf individuals who struggle to read English. Some could be very, very, very smart, and they still struggle with English. They just struggle to understand it. You could also have the reverse of that. So whenever it comes to captioning, sometimes it just completely goes over your head and you completely don't understand it. Sometimes the captioning is just not effective. Sometimes the captioning is just completely distorted and it's not even accurate anymore, or some odd word pops up in there and it's like, that's not even related to what they're talking about right now. I think in the last several years with AI, the automatic captioning is starting to, it's just making things worse. We advise not to rely on the AI auto captioning. Take your time, type it out, do the captions correctly, do it right. If you want, I can show you so many different videos and examples of awful captioning where something was in there that was completely inaccurate.
We talked about earlier, too, the shortage of interpreters. Do you hope that more people engage on this?
Yes. The community is starting to recognize the need for accessibility. There's so much awareness about the shortage of interpreters. I mean, we have a interpreting agency and we're struggling to cover all of the jobs that we have available, and we're doing the best that we can, but the community is aware of it. We work closely with college that has an American Sign Language, it's called an interpreting program there, to encourage students to develop their skills.
We are very grateful for your time today. Ellie, did you have any other questions or anything else that we should cover?
The only thing I think of, and again, we appreciate you guys' time, is we see this show has a relationship between Clark and Floyd, and I'm just kind of curious, I hope this isn't too invasive, but the relationship between you guys as far as how the synergy, as you guys mentioned, the tone, inflections, things of that nature. Like, how can you guys talk on you guys' experience with each other, working with each other?
Yes. So within the interview for this, I had a preferential to use an interpreter that I knew and knew me well, who was able to read me well, able to read my my body language and everything, and able to match me. Often, whenever we're doing a presentation or something, I always request a specific interpreter that I know who is going to be able to match me well. I don't just want like a random person I'm meeting for the first time and, I'll be fine. There's always the room for error. So for the importance of this interview, I was like, let's have someone that I know knows me and knows my choice of words. Interpreters are trained to have a long, long list of vocabulary that they can choose from, because there are many, many words that they could use for one sign. Many, many English words could match that one sign. But it's very important to match up well an interpreter with the deaf person who is presenting. Some of our signs have more than one English word. For example, work. It could be, this sign right there, it could mean work. It could mean job. It could mean vocational. It could mean employment. It could be any of those words, any of those related to job, employment with that one sign. So in this interview, I didn't want to just use simple word work. That's not the word I wanted. I'm interacting with you, I'm communicating with you, but my interpreter knows to use more of those elevated language that I would be choosing for this. And this interpreter knows my preference for language and my preference for words. When we have job interviews, that could be a very make it or break it situation. If I were to apply for a job and I were to ask for an interpreter, through the ADA, it is my right to have an interpreter in that interview. So I can tell them, hey, I would like to have an interpreter, and they hire an interpreter. It's out of my control. It's beyond my control. And they could bring an interpreter in. It's like, oh, okay, try doing the interview, but the interpreter isn't matching my skills. They're not matching my vocabulary. The interpreter's struggling to understand what I'm saying, making me look bad in the interview. When it's not me, it's the interpreter. I am understanding it. I am signing everything perfectly. I am understanding the questions, but the interpreter is struggling. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Do you mind saying that again? You're hurting my interview. And the hiring party is going to be like, oh no. And that wasn't me. That was the interpreter. So whenever you say that, it is really important to have the right interpreter to be able to match your signing style and your signing skills and your vocabulary.
Anything else that you think is important for people to be thinking about or to know based on this show or anything else in the amazing work you do?
At Deaf Inc., we offer community ASL classes. So if you're any viewers of this show are very fascinated and interested in learning sign language, wanting to learn how to communicate with deaf individuals, please contact Deaf Inc. I am happy to share some of that information from our ASL classes. We also have several other areas that offer classes, and I'm happy to share some of those as well.
We are so grateful for your time. Thank you for being here with us.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And we will be right back right after this. All right, well, welcome back. We have a very special guest joining us now. This is Chief Meteorologist for First Alert 4, Steve Templeton. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so you are our resident expert on all things weather, period.
Yeah.
I mean, just so you guys know.
I like to think so.
Well, just for those who are watching out there, I mean, you perform such an amazing public service for people every single day, but especially when weather is getting very tricky or tough.
Yeah.
Why did you get into this, first and foremost?
So I liked earth science, and I'll try to tighten it up and make it a short story. But my grandfather, who I never knew, was a geologist, and he died in a landslide looking for oil during the war.
Oh my goodness!
And so I share his name. And this is hindsight 2020, though. Looking back, I wanted to be in earth science and geology because I thought there might be a connection with him.
Wow.
And it turns out I hate geology. But that's where I discovered I really understood and enjoyed atmospheric science, and then kind of ran with that. And I thought I'd be like a middle school or high school teacher and teach earth science. But I went to school for meteorology, and I interned with a TV meteorologist, and I was like, this is kind of like teaching, but on TV. Let's try that. And then it's been fantastic ever since.
Did you feel like you had certain skill sets right off the bat, whether it's public speaking or comfortability in front of a camera, that just combine that science love with this on-air part?
So now, 26 years into my career, I can reflect on that. If you asked me that 15, 20 years ago, I don't think I'd have the same answer. But I think I understand the math and science, the math enough, the science really well. But I also understand, I'd like to think, how to communicate with people. And that's really the key to my job. I'm a science communicator. So I can bridge the gap between the science and what the public needs to know to help keep them safe or just help them plan their day. So I'm a science communicator, and I can bridge that gap. I think early in my career, I focused more on me being the scientist, and now I can say, no, communication is an art and a science, and I need to be able to do that real well.
And I think you do it so well. I mean, obviously, to be able to communicate with effectiveness and clarity, but conversationally and calm. Do you feel like in the past, maybe TV meteorologists have gotten, a bad rap for being kind of like having a persona? Do you think you have a persona, or are you who you are on TV?
I think, there's so many TV meteorologists, and they're all kind of different. But I mean, there's some that have maybe more than a persona, like a big ego, right? And they steer into that, and the marketing department steers into that. So there's some like that, but there's some that are just down to earth and nerdy, and there's some that don't really care about the TV side. They care about the science side, and there's some that really care about the TV side, and they're not as good with the science. So we're kind of all over the board on that. But, I'd like to think that I don't have the big ego, and I don't think I have a persona. The only thing I can think of with a persona is do I roll up my sleeves or not, right?
Yes,
but that's a communication trick, because if I am doing that, then I've got your attention. So if it's a big deal, I've got your attention, and that's what I need to help keep you safe.
Again, for people outside of the St. Louis area, or even people who need a refresher here, if you see Steve's sleeves start to roll up, things are getting very serious. It's the sleeve meter, they call it.
and that's if I remember. Sometimes I'm so wrapped up in covering the tornado that I forget. But that's a little communication trick that people in St. Louis at least tend to know. Okay, if his sleeves are rolled up, let's really pay attention. Now, hopefully they're going to the basement no matter what. But we all know there's a difference between really weak and brief tornadoes and big bad ones like we had on May 16th that killed several people. So some way to differentiate that is part of the communication art and science I was talking about.
I'm glad you brought up that tornado, because obviously the show starts with what they call a cyclone. I know that's bothering a lot of St. Louisans because we don't call them a cyclone, and I want to ask you about that. But we did have a devastating and terrible tornado here.
Yep.
And I just want to remind people of that. It is a part of St. Louis's history from now on.
Yeah, for sure. And I can't remember the show well enough to know, were they talking about a hurricane?
They kept calling it a cyclone.
Because he was outside, right?
And I think we're
no
supposed
one's
to assume it's
a tornado.
Yeah, and with his ASL interpreter, which we're going to talk about that in a second too. But yes, do you remember what you kind of thought about, right, of seeing that scene right off the bat?
I thought of like Al Roker out covering a hurricane, because there's people in cars at a safe distance trying to cover a tornado, but no one would be like standing outside with debris flying in a tornado. I don't think you should be doing that in a hurricane either, but we see it happen with hurricanes. So I thought maybe he was talking about a cyclone, like maybe he was on assignment somewhere. I was very confused by it, and I just wonder if they didn't have an on-set meteorologist to kind of guide them.
Is there a scientific difference between a cyclone and a tornado?
So cyclone, the term's been they're low pressures, but a tornado is like a very intense small low pressure. Cyclone is a term used in other parts of the world for a hurricane. But that term cyclone, long time ago, was also used for tornadoes, which is why you see Iowa State Cyclones is their mascot.
Okay.
And in 1896, we had a devastating tornado come right through St. Louis, right through what almost basically would have been the arch, but it was 1896, so there's no arch. And they called it the Great Cyclone of 1896. So that term is kind of was thrown around for tornadoes, not so much anymore. Nowadays, it tends to refer to hurricanes.
That is so interesting. And then, of course, we have this ASL interpreter. And this is sort of how these two central characters meet each other, but they're out there together covering the storm. Does that
Which
read
is crazy.
inauthentic
You're
to
putting
you?
two people in jeopardy. Why would you do that?
And a cameraman.
No. We have, we have closed captioning, and you don't need an interpreter. We don't have an interpreter. I've never even met an interpreter, so that just doesn't exist. I don't know, why they created that other than for the storyline.
Yeah. A couple other things I know people noticed. He has a makeup artist in one scene.
Nope.
You don't have one of those.
Nope. My sister told me what makeup to get 26 years ago, and I've been buying it ever since.
And that's it.
And I put it on myself. Yep. I buy it myself. Yep.
Okay, and Clark is his name, the TV weatherman in this show. He also has this warm-up dance that he does in the intro and the theme. He psychs himself up for his weathercasts. Do you do that, or is that just
that on air?
silly?
Does he do that on air, or is it behind the scenes?
I think we're supposed to understand it's probably as he's getting ready.
Okay.
He's hyping himself up.
Pumping himself up.
Yeah.
No, I don't need to pump myself up. That's pretty crazy. I think clearly on the show, his role as a meteorologist is more of a showman and less of a meteorologist. In fact, I haven't gotten as far as you have, but I haven't seen anything where he's studying maps, doing forecasts in the morning and emailing his boss, emailing the team, posting on Twitter, posting on Facebook, and letting people know about the severe weather threat and what's new. It seems like he actually seems to lead a pretty cushy life.
I think he has way too much free time for extracurricular
Seriously.
activities. I think that also reads inauthentic. He's having a Jamba Juice in the middle of the day, and I'm I know our folks don't have time to actually eat lunch.
I got a tea. I got a tea in the middle of the day, but I'm also looking at the clock because in about 17 minutes I have a mic check to do, and we're going to be on the air.
I know. It is a busy life, and it's challenging. Do you get people that recognize you outside of work, and how do you kind of handle that?
Oh, that's a treat. First of all, being able to shake hands with someone, and also weather's such an icebreaker. You can always talk about weather with anyone in the Midwest, especially St. Louis, right? They all have a story. They always want to talk about weather. So it's a great icebreaker way to talk to people and meet people. But for me, it means they watch, right? So if you watch me and trust me and know me, then that's a great thing because, if you're broadcasting to no one, then it's futile. So it's good to know you've got an audience out there and people that are fun to talk to and that trust you.
When you see portrayals in the media of any meteorologist, on air or otherwise, in this one, obviously, we have a character getting arrested for murder. It's not exactly a positive portrayal.
And they didn't wait for commercial break. They did it right on the air. Really?
Here's hoping that never happens to anyone at this television station. That would just be mortifying, obviously, for everyone. But do you kind of go, oh, gosh, I wish they would portray it this way? Or does it help, again, bring awareness to the profession?
I don't think it brings awareness to the profession at all. And what I've seen in the show, the meteorologist part of it isn't key. It isn't central. It's just kind of there. Maybe it makes it a little more interesting. Maybe it makes him a little more interesting, but it's not. It's really. It kind of reminds me. In fact, I think it was called The Weatherman. There was a movie called The Weatherman. Nicolas Cage.
Yep.
It was kind of dark, and it really wasn't about him being a weatherman. he was a weatherman, and maybe that made his character a little more interesting, but that story wasn't about him. It was kind of dark, and then this is reminding me of that. It's not about being a weatherman, but it's there.
I know the internet will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly certain that the writer of this show was also the writer of that
Are you
movie.
serious?
Yes. And so if you look back at a previous episode, folks who are watching out there, we interviewed the show creator, Stephen Conrad, and I asked him, why are you so obsessed with TV weathermen?
Yeah.
And he just has kind of had this interest ever since he was a kid. He actually told a story about how he threw a milkshake at a TV weatherman while they were on a live remote when he was a kid.
An actual milkshake at an actual
milkshake.
human being, a meteorologist?
Yes. And he's like, I feel kind of bad about that now, but it happened.
I think we need to bring him on with a therapist. That would be an interesting podcast.
I mean, he's certainly delving into some of the
something
reasons
there,
people
though.
need therapy.
Yeah, there's something there if two movies or, well, one show and one movie about meteorologists.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I think it's this idea of this, like, again, public versus private persona and what our maybe private lives are different from our public lives, which, as a TV person myself, in my experience, for the most part, most of us are just as we are on TV. We're just regular human beings doing our thing, having families, living lives, and it's pretty boring overall.
I could also see, especially when he was a kid, but other people may not perceive what they see on TV as that's who he is as a person. They may see that or see you and think, I'll bet she's different behind the scenes, or I'll bet he's different, right? So that what they perceive on air, they may not realize, like, hey, that actually is pretty much who I am. There was one bit of advice when I was interning too, and I still remember it to this day. This guy said, Jim Ramsey is his name, he's a meteorologist, great guy, and he said, the hardest thing to do about TV meteorology is to be natural in a very unnatural environment. Because if you were to see the studio, it's a very unnatural environment. And you see glimpses of that in the show where there's the green screen and there's lights and there's people watching, and it's very unnatural. So you might think you tend to turn on the persona, but actually just relaxing and being yourself is going to make you more successful. And that's what I try to do. And I think that's what probably a lot of meteorologists and anchors do, and reporters.
Yeah. Well, we are so grateful for you. Any final thoughts that you have after this little conversation?
I'm glad there's some topics we didn't delve into on the show. I appreciate that.
We're staying away from some topics. Here, our F stands for facts.
I like that. No, look, anything that brings attention to St. Louis, and I don't think this is a negative light necessarily, but it does bring attention to us, is a good thing. We want to be on the map. We want to be known, and hopefully it's for more positive things going forward in the rest of the show.
Steve Templeton, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Again, I just have been pretty excited that we've had some fun guests on this show.
Incredible guests. Yeah.
We're really grateful to everybody who's come on and taught us some new things here where our F stands for facts. We've been getting down to the facts on this show, and I'm really glad that we've gotten that opportunity through this show.
100%. The conversations have been incredible. The information has been even better, and then just meeting great people in St. Louis that represent all these different corners of where we live has been really incredible.
Yeah, I mean, we are glad to have a spotlight just with this show on our town. We like living here. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
And St. Louis is a great town. But we're going to get our final episode of DTF coming up.
Yeah.
Obviously, this last episode, we know that Floyd still went to the Kevin Klein community pool, which Kevin Klein's from St. Louis, by the way. We haven't mentioned that yet. I think they slipped that in. But why? Why did he go there then?
Right now, my mind's telling me, and we talked about this weeks ago, I always had an inkling that maybe, unfortunately, especially now with the context of where he was mentally, maybe he accidentally took the pill in a terrible mixture, unfortunately died, or it could have been purposefully, unfortunately, depression, things of that nature. But now I'm starting to think this whole idea of Richard, and they brought up the bike. He's so interested in the bike, and they mentioned it's like a ghost bike. They don't know who's on the bike. Did Richard go there at night and wanted to help his stepdad out? And Floyd, because they mentioned that Floyd didn't want him to know about any of this, the affair and all that stuff, and now he knows. But unfortunately, Floyd's not around anymore. So, did Richard go there and he felt bad? And then, of course, you have the idea now with this new mystery player in the game. So there seems to be a couple different routes we can go. And I'm just hoping that whatever route they choose is something that we can all be like, oh, that was I didn't expect that coming.
Yeah, and Clark's wife, obviously we have 2 married
Yeah.
couples here.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
only seen 3 central characters, and I just think that is such a mystery that must be intentional for some reason.
Right,
I can't
right.
imagine they would just like completely ignore her, Emmy, for all that.
I hope not. I hope not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we know there's a knock on the door. It ends with a knock on the door. Someone's coming to hang out with Floyd. So we're
Yeah.
going to find out who in our last episode.
Yep.
So we will see. Again, we've encouraged people to reach out to us, give us your thoughts. Seeing some good comments on like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and
Yeah.
even some emails. So we really are appreciative of those. It helps us in our perspective too. Elliot, give your shout outs. Where can they find you?
Yeah, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Letterboxd, all those cool sites talk about the latest movies and shows. Check me out. We have fun over there.
Movie Files.
Movie Files
is
yes.
how to find you. And
Yes, yes.
you are not just reviewing this show. You are constantly reviewing so many things. I don't know how you keep
Yeah.
up with everything.
I've figured out a way to clone myself. It's
There-
a secret that I've kept for a couple
There you
years
go.
now. Yeah.
I'm going to need that little formula after we get off here, but we really appreciate it. I'm Lauren Traeger on Instagram, TikTok, all those as well. And we are First Alert 4 here in St. Louis, and we will see you back for the final episode. All right. Looking forward to it.